What's up, peeps? Sorry it took so long. I was trying to figure out what was going on with Twitter. For some reason, Periscope isn't doing what it's supposed to be doing. But nonetheless, we are here and we are live on YouTube. What's going on? I missed you guys. Oh, look, I'm moving my camera. Look, moving my camera. There we go. We back in business. There we go. But yeah, I missed everybody. In case you're wondering, I was on vacation. I took a vacation with my partners for Just Inform, with Suzanne Murphy and Tim Black. And to be totally honest with you, it was much needed. It was totally awesome, almost perfect in every single way. And can't complain. Can't complain. Have no regrets. Do not regret taking those days off. I needed them. And so super excited to be back. I do have a couple of huge, as Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders would both say, announcements at the end of the video. So if you want to catch them, you're just going to have to stick around. Because when I tell you they're massive announcements, don't take that lightly. They are both massive announcements. One of them, some of you may have already heard. However, the other ones, or the other one, I can guarantee none of you have heard that one. Because only a couple of people know about it. So make sure you stick around so I can clue you all in on that. And if you all could share this video, I would greatly appreciate it. Okay. All right, so I'm not sure that all of you are aware, but a huge victory for the populist movement, for the progressive movement, for the independent movement, for the, anti-Russia xenophobia movement, because I'm just not okay with any type of xenophobia. But a huge victory was had this past week. Actually, I think it was 2 days ago. Let me see when the article was written. I believe it was 2 days ago, though. 23rd, so not even 2 days ago. A day and a half ago. That actually flew relatively under the radar. Now, I love the title of the article because the article makes you, you know how the mainstream media does. What do? Oh my God, Trump is the worst person ever. Look, like I said, got my grievances with Trump, but even broke clock is right twice a day. Even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. And this is no different, really. This is no different. And I mean, for the most part, if you can give Trump credit in any department of his presidency, it would be the fact that he's been pretty good at dealing with the xenophobia that is being constantly thrusted upon him by both the Democratic and the Republican establishments. It isn't just unique. They've been really attacking from all sides, especially after that meeting. And they've been trying to slip in legislation that would, screw over people, like real people. They always say, oh, we're going to show the Russian government. We're going to show Putin. We're going to show those oligarchs. But we all know when these sanctions are passed, when these laws are passed, they don't necessarily affect, like they did the same thing to Iran. It was the people who suffered, not the government. The government and the oligarchs are rich. That's what they do. They stay rich. They stay in power. And it's non-unique. That's how it kind of happens in our country as well. So, but with this legislation, a bill, quote unquote, this is from Yahoo, a bill that would have significantly bolstered the nation's defenses against electoral interference has been held up in the Senate at the behest of the White House, which opposed the proposed legislation, according to congressional sources. Now, this legislation is called the quote-unquote Secure Elections Act, introduced by Senator James Lankford, Republican out of Oklahoma, in December 2017. And it had a co-sponsorship from two of the Senate's most prominent liberals. Kamala Harris, oh, how do we know? And can we please, for the sake of everything that is good and holy, stop referring to Kamala Harris as prominent? She isn't prominent in anyone's mind other than Kamala Harris. She's not important. She hasn't done anything significant. She's made no groundbreaking amendments, nor has passed any groundbreaking legislation. The only groundbreaking thing Kamala Harris has ever done was make sure that no matter what, she continues to back those banks. So let's be very clear about that. But Amy Klobuchar from Minnesota was also part of that legislation. Lindsey Graham actually co-sponsored it as well. Now, as it currently stands, this article, I want to make sure that I'm very clear about that. This article claims that the legislation would grant every state's top election official security clearance to receive threat information. Even though most states kind of already do that, but whatever. It would also formalize, this is where it gets fun. It would also formalize the practice of information sharing between the federal government, in particular, the Department of Homeland Security, and the states regarding threats to electoral infrastructure. A technical advisory board would establish best practices related to election cyber security. And that's the kicker. We knew it was coming. It was just a matter of time. And if you're a conservative, I would be up in arms, because this is literally just another attempt to consolidate power within the federal government, when we've seen clearly that Vladimir Putin is the most sophisticated and intelligent cyber hacker in the history of everything all the time. Like, according to the federal government, according to the news. So the last thing I want, I mean, this is just me, the government's, I mean, and I'm not, you know me, I'm not a liberal, I'm progressive. I mean, I'm not libertarian, I'm not a conservative, I'm not a Republican, but let's just be very clear and honest. The federal government has done a piss poor job on all levels of protecting our electoral politics. And in fact, Barack Obama actually tried to pretend that election fraud didn't exist, remember? He's like, oh, Trump, this isn't some third world country. He's looking for excuses. Yeah. To be totally honest with you, I hope that he had like a little handkerchief and, you know, a steak knife, 2 forks, and a spoon, so that whenever he ate those words, he could do it in a classy manner, because that's exactly what he ended up doing. There was election fraud that was still committed. There are several open cases in court right now, and yet the liberal establishment, the neoliberal establishment, still lost. But according to Barack Obama, this is totally unnecessary, because remember, only third world countries have election fraud. Interesting. So the Department of Homeland Security, which is entirely overrun and led by neoliberals and neocons, would essentially be able to establish, handpick, by the way, its own board to establish the best practices related to cybersecurity for the elections. Now, what the article goes on to say is that perhaps most significantly, the law would mandate that every state conduct a statistically significant audit following federal elections. It would also incentivize the purchase. Oh, God. I missed this part. It would also incentivize the purchase of voting machines that leave a paper record of votes casted, as opposed to some all electronic models that do not. How about no? How about no more voting machines? I want to do a little deep dive into the actual legislation itself. In case you wanted to know what the legislation was called, it is S-2261. And essentially, the main components of this legislation are, like I said, the bill gives the Department of Homeland Security the primary responsibility within the federal government for sharing information about election security incidents, threats, and vulnerabilities with federal entities and election agencies. DHS shall establish an advisory panel of independent experts to develop guidelines on election cybersecurity, including standards of procuring, maintaining, testing, auditing, operating. So now the Department of Homeland Security is going to audit elections. Remember what we said about the Democratic primary election, people? We were screaming for the Department of Homeland Security to get involved, yet it did nothing. It wasn't even, Barack Obama laughed at us. Remember? I was there. Literally laughed at us. So, yeah. And then it also says that the DHS shall award election system cybersecurity and modernization grants to states to implement advisory panels guidelines. So it gets better, because those incentives come when you remediate vulnerabilities identified by a cybersecurity evaluation, whatever that means. Replace electronic voting systems that are not optical scanners that read paper ballots. And 3, reimburse states for the inspection of marked paper ballots. The DHS shall establish a hack the election program, including a recurring competition to facilitate and encourage the identification and reporting of election cybersecurity by independent technical experts. Now, all of this sounds well and good, but I don't know if you all remember this. But when one representative, Tulsi Gabbard, tried to introduce a comprehensive bill that would, to my knowledge, require mandatory auditing, paper ballots across the board, things like that. Substantive, like legitimate work towards election integrity. Remember they killed that legislation? And yet, and still, this is what sickens me about the establishment. Now the establishment is saying that it's Trump who killed the election integrity bill, when in actuality, it was the House and the Senate that killed the original, the more substantive, the more comprehensive election integrity bill that was introduced by none other than Tulsi Gabbard. That got no news, that got no coverage, that was never talked about by popular liberals such as Kamala Harris. The Kirsten Gillibrands of the world didn't talk about it. The Joe Bidens of the world, the Senator Warrens and all these prominent minds, all these prominent liberals, these Republicans as well, did not give a damn about what Tulsi Gabbard introduced, which was pretty much, let's get rid of these voting machines that are corrupt. Let's start having mandatory hand recounts. Mandatory. Because the thing is, Tulsi Gabbard was not trying to centralize the issue. This is a centralization thing. That is, by the way, premised and predicated on the idea that somehow Russia hacked our election. So, in its very nature, it is a deceptive bill created only to maintain the illusion that somehow, some way, without any proof whatsoever, Russia hacked our elections. So now every single time one of our progressives, one of our populist candidates is running for office and we're winning and they don't get the candidate they want to win, the DHS can unilaterally say, because they got an independent board, that somebody who pissed us off hacked the election. Think about that. The Department of Homeland Security selects an independent board. I wonder if CrowdStrike, is going to be on that board. You know what's a little frustrating about all of this? Probably more than anything else. Have you seen anything or read anything about this legislation that addresses specifically the domestic issues that we deal with when it comes to election integrity every day? Think about that. We have gerrymandering running rampant, being used by both the Democrats and the Republicans, although right now it is primarily used by Republicans. But the Democrats do it too. Don't get it wrong. So we have gerrymandering to deal with. We have electronic voting machines that, according to the recent TechnoCon, where all the techno-weenies get together and just hack stuff for whatever reason. They hacked into a electronic voting machine in under an hour. And that was without access. They weren't even given access. That's hacked into the machine within an hour. We had a situation in Wayne County, which is the Detroit area in Michigan, where tens of thousands of voting machines the votes couldn't be reconciled because the machines were tampered with. We have people getting dropped from voter rolls. We have Brenda Snipes, chairwoman, of the Broward County Board of Elections, literally destroy ballots. And you have absolutely no accountability, which is funny about that, because you see how this talks about incentivization instead of accountability. Because our elections have already been stolen. But if you introduce the idea of accountability, then, we expect people to be held accountable. I'm glad Lisa just brought this up. Why isn't this talking about ranked choice voting? There are already states that are putting this on their propositions to be voted on. Why aren't we doing everything? Why don't we introduce a substantive, comprehensive legislation that address all the issues instead of the ones the media chooses to harp on? We know why. Because they don't want to. They want to maintain the facade that it was cybersecurity. It was hacked Facebook and troll accounts. I don't want people to be I don't want to have to incentivize states to do the right thing by giving them more money and more freedom. What I want is to incentivize states and Board of Election officials by doing what the law requires, which is to follow it and hold people accountable, Brenda Snipes, who don't follow the law. This bill is nothing. This bill says, hey, we can communicate with them if their elections are being tampered with, and we incentivize them to do what we want, but they don't have to. This bill is literally nothing. David Vega, no, they actually do not have a requirement for paper ballots. What they do is they award grants to those who use machines that have paper ballot backups. And they award grant and reimbursement to those who would do a mandatory recount. What do you think they actually want? Do you think that if I had the choice of maintaining my corrupt elections that my corrupt lobbyists pay for, and my corrupt Democratic Party and corrupt Republican Party all support, I'm going to get paid regardless? Or do I want to be incentivized by some grants for a recount to make sure that my corrupt election is legitimate? Hey, this once again is another example of us having a carrot dangled in front of us. It will not address anything substantive. It will not address gerrymandering. It will not address election machines. It will not address electoral integrity in any meaningful way. It does not require a damn thing. We already pay to have our elections be legitimate. Like, we already pay for that. That's what our taxes are for. But now you're offering more of our money to incentivize people to do the right thing, but you're offering, you have no mechanism of accountability. You're just offering more federal information to them. The ones who allow the elections to be hacked, the ones who gerrymander, the ones who use cross-state name checking to prevent people from voting and having their votes turned out. When are we going to get substantive legislation? And once again, this is the bill number, by the way. If you just tuned in, I'll go ahead and give it to you again. S2261. You can go to congress.gov to check it out. S2261. Interstate cross-check, by the way, is what I was referring to. But anyway, once again, shout out to Tulsi freaking Gabbard, who was ahead of the game. Who, her legislation wasn't absolutely 100% perfect, of course, because it didn't have ranked choice voting. But mandatory paper ballots, recounts across the board, audits across the board. It's one of the things that Tim Canova wants to do as soon as he gets into Congress. Mandatory audits across the board. And when she introduced this legislation, it got absolutely no traction, absolutely no friction. She was not given due credit. It was killed. And yet, they're pretending as if Trump denying this legislation, like, it's not substantive, and it's based on xenophobia. It's based on Russian xenophobia. Lisa, I would agree with mandatory IDs. However, I would limit the restrictions, as in, it doesn't necessarily have to be a government ID. I think that an expired ID, as long as it's you, it's fine. I don't see, like, you didn't change yourself in 15 days after your ID expired, right? I think that student IDs should be perfectly fine, because I'm one of the people that do believe if you're a student in a state, then you should be able to vote in that state if you so choose, because that's where you live, that's where your bills are being paid, that's where you're paying your taxes. So I agree with that. Obviously, passports should be okay and those things, but I think that there are states that go out of their way to make it disgustingly difficult, like Alabama, what we saw, where they changed the voter ID laws and then closed all the DMVs in the black communities within like a 30-40 mile radius so that nobody could get IDs, and then closed down public transportation. So yeah, I think that we do need to address election integrity, but I absolutely do not believe that this legislation is what we are going to do or to use to get that job done. I just don't think it. So, with that being said, I'll go ahead and I gotta talk to you about this announcement. So, if you have not heard, we will be on Roku, as in the MCSC network will be on Roku. It was supposed to be starting today. Unfortunately, on the way back from my vacation, I got into some roadside trouble. Tire popped. Roadside assistance was just not good. Had to wait a whole day to get everything done, and so I got set back. But hopefully by either tomorrow or Monday, I don't know if they work on the weekends, but by Monday we'll be live and on Roku. So I'm hype about that. If you are on Roku, I know a lot of people love Roku. I didn't realize how many people had Roku. But yeah, so we just signed our contract with them. All of my network will be on Roku, and Tim Black of TBTV will be on Roku as well. I believe he just signed his deal. Now, this is the news, the exclusive that nobody else knows about, except for maybe you all after I tell you. A lot of people have always said that they felt that should be, that should have more of an audience. They say that they can't believe that I don't have 100,000 subscribers, and they can't believe that I haven't, taken off. And of course, that's all appreciated. And I believe that there is some validity to that. Just given the network of people that I know and what we talk about. But I am also very aware that the things that we talk about are controversial. I'm very aware that because I don't pick a side, because I will just not blindly reaffirm anybody's beliefs just for subscribers, just for likes, just for views, that there are consequences that come with that. But no matter what, I know that if I stay true to myself and stay true to this message of populism, peace, prosperity, anti-war, and basic, humanity and accountability and integrity, then things will fall into place as they should, as long as I continue to be myself and the people on my network continue to perpetuate the same message. And it looks as if things did fall the way they should, because I had an audition about 2.5-3 months ago for a show, and I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't know if I would get the part. Turns out I did. I got it. So I can't tell you the name of the show because contractual things, but I will have my own show that is dedicated to, it's like a reality television show, talking about my activism, the things that we're doing with the network, covering the topics that we're covering on the network, covering the DNC fraud lawsuit and my involvement in it, and pretty much following me from 2019 all the way through the 2020 election. Like I said, I can't tell you what the name of it is, and I can't tell you what network we're signing with yet, because we're in, hell no, I'm not going to the Young Turks. No. When I tell you this is going to be my show, I mean like this is going to be on network television. Yeah. And I'm just very fortunate because the person who brought me on is a progressive, is a very, not well-known progressive, but well-known within like the inner circle of the progressive community. And she was just like, hey, we really want you to do this. And, I had that convo from the beginning. Like, if you all want me to be somebody that I'm not, you want me to say things that I don't normally say, to pretty much censor myself, then I just want to save everybody some trouble because I'm not doing it. But they were like, actually, no, we want you to be yourself. We think that, the reality of the situation is the things that we talk about here, believe it or not, has become pop culture, and the world is becoming much more aware of it, which is why the Roku deal came into fruition, which is why this television show is coming into fruition. We're shooting our first pilot within the next couple of weeks. We should have more knowledge on which network is going to buy the show in the next couple of months. And I'm very thankful. I'm just thankful about this is 2.5 years. There are a lot of people on YouTube that have been on for 10, 15 years and haven't gotten the traction that we've got. Been on Facebook and Twitter for 10 or 15 years and haven't gotten the traction that we got. And I just got very fortunate to find the people on my network. I got very fortunate to have people like Tim Black confide in me and Suzanne Murphy confide in me and all the people who, Elizabeth Lee Voss from Disobedient Media and Caitlin Johnstone writing for us, and all the people who have like really been part of my journey and growth as a journalist, because as you all know, I didn't come in to the game as a broadcast journalist. I came in as an activist, then evolved into a strategist, and then I evolved into a activist strategist journalist, and then I evolved into activist strategist journalist insider. And it's going to be dope. It's going to be dope. I'm really, really excited about it because I just get to like be myself, you know. I get to do what I do every day. I get to do what I love. I get to make sure that my family can like eat, and I don't have to struggle and figure out where my next meal is coming from. And I get to focus 100% on my network, on my activism, on my consulting with progressive candidates, which is a problem for the establishment. And I just can't wait for it. I can't wait, boy. I don't even know. They're going to have some problems. Because, mind you, my life is most often split up between my job that pays, extra side work I do, and making sure that I can put food on the table, and then activism. But now, politics is about to become life. And politics is pretty much already my life. But now I get to focus on it. You know what that means for everybody else. We coming for you. So, hope the establishment's prepared. And if you didn't know by now, you're going to learn eventually. Always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.